Welcome to the Lights Out Podcast. This is Chris Lights Out Lytle, and this is our journey to document the history of mixed martial arts. I have brought with me my friend, the MMA detective Mike Davis, and together we will preserve the history and hear some great stories from the world in the era of the no-holds-barred. Thank you and enjoy.
Welcome back to the Lights Out MMA History Podcast. I am Joey Venti. I'm with the host of the show, the MMA detective Mike Davis. We have a great one for you today. Thanks to Ralph Garcia with Florida Mixed Martial Arts Hall of Fame. Today's guest is a veteran of everything. Super Brawl, Abu Dhabi, Pride, Strikeforce, Dream, Affliction, Pancrase, you name it. He's done it. He is also the former UFC Heavyweight Champion of the world. He is the baby-faced assassin. He is the War Master. He is Josh Barnett. Thank you for being here, Josh.
Yeah, my pleasure to be here.
Josh, did you listen to all that coming out of that guy's mouth?
Well, I mean, he didn't gag, so he's got a good relaxation technique, I suppose.
You've done a lot of shit, dude. Like when we go and approach people's careers, a few times when we kind of go down this avenue, you look at their body of work and it's pretty friggin' intimidating. So what you got to do is, like, what I have to do is subtract a large bulk of it, concentrate on a certain period. So your beginnings are what we got. And when I look at your Wikipedia page, which obviously is normally a terrible reference, there's a couple things.
Yeah, it needs to be updated, that's for sure.
Yeah. So there's a couple things that stand out. Jim Harrison, your original sensei, who you went to college with. Could you give us just a little bit of background on him?
So Jim Harrison was an old school American karateka from, well, actually, I think I wonder if he was originally from, I think he's originally from Montana. Then he had a school in St. Louis, Missouri, and then eventually came back to Montana. And he had a school in, damn it, why am I forgetting the name of the college town?
Is it Montana?
So,
yeah, Missoula.
Okay. Yeah, Missoula, Montana. But he was an old school blood and guts, bare knuckle karate guy. That was the way that what was called point karate back in the 60s and 70s. And that's just the way it was done. It was a very different animal from, I'd say, what you'd see today. Spawned people like Benny the Jet and Pat Burleson, Joe Louis, and Chuck Norris. Those kind of guys.
Okay.
And he was also a decorated judoka. He did police work, mercenary stuff, fought in tournaments, was the first U.S. light heavyweight kickboxing champion, and then also became a really prolific referee and trainer, training people like Superfoot Bill Wallace, among others. Some that I can't quite recall them all, but just a guy that really is an epitome of that, like, super masculine, figurehead. But
did you ever see him?
Totally
did you ever see him
true
street
and
fight?
well deserved.
Did you ever see him street
No,
fight?
I never got to see him in a street fight. People didn't. I mean, look, he was probably in his upper 60s when I first met him, but yeah, he just give you a look and you're like, forget it. It's just not worth it. But a great coach. Always viewed like the whole MMA process as not really his specialty. But the thing is, he was so instrumental to me as an athlete and as a developing MMA coach that I think he just it was modesty, but also maybe even underestimated how much he was really putting into the whole process, because full contact, full go sparring. We would do MMA training there at the gym, and his understanding of grappling as well as striking, by being someone that did judo and karate and street fighting and all this, and having a self-defense system that he had to create, which would include all these things. He's very knowledgeable. He just knew how to fight, and he knew how to harness a fighter's mentality. So that was a really positive, somewhat first step. But I'd say even first step before that was training with a Filipino cat named Edwin Romarosa when I was a teenager, like is 17, 18, and 19 years old, learning Muay Thai basics from a security guard named Sensei Jim at Ballard High School. Even goofing around with my friends, hitting pads like focus mitts, and not obviously knowing hardly anything, but just being driven by what I would say would be that that jolt that the UFC put into martial arts.
Okay. Well, you mentioned high school, and it also mentions that Matt Hume was your high school wrestling coach.
No, that's incorrect. Matt, I
Really?
met through an old wrestling coach,
Okay.
Kevin Corbett. While, if we're getting real technical about it, Kevin wasn't my official high school wrestling coach because he was at Everett High School and I was at Ballard, two different cities, Seattle and Everett. But by my senior year, I didn't have anybody in the room to go with. I needed training partners. I needed a higher intensity environment because I was going to state every year. And at the school I was at, that never happened. And I still might be the most decorated heavyweight wrestler in Seattle history, but that's also because their wrestling is not really widely known in Seattle, Washington. You get outside the major cities and you'll get some killers, but not the city of Seattle. So I traveled 45 minutes or so, or 30 minutes every day to get to Everett to go do their high school practice, their wrestling practice for all their postseason and everything like that. And that became a ritual. Now, Kevin Corbett was connected to Matt Hume. And when I was in my first year of university, he hit me up about a fight opportunity because he knew I was training. We'd been talking. And of course, since he was working with Matt on some things, he was the closest to the most professional source at the time. Well, he knew I was training at Mr. Harrison's at Bushido Karate and doing whatever I could to spar and train and all kinds of wacky stuff, to be perfectly honest. But the opportunity came up for me to take a short notice fight as a replacement against this cat, Chris Charnos, who was already
Let me set the table.
And,
so it's January 11th, 1997, United Full Contact Federation.
Yeah,
it's Matt Hume's
Matt
Hume's actual event. Go ahead, Chris Charnos.
Yes, and that's his student as well, who had already fought in Super Brawl and stuff like that. So okay, I know he's got seniority and experience and age and martial arts training, but to hell with it. I had been doing really quite well for myself where I was, so I thought, all right, no big deal. Let me go after this.
Yeah,
what's the worst could happen? Get no fight.
Yeah, I mean, Charnos was 2-1 at the time. Let's talk about meeting Matt Hume for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
Would you mind telling us your impression?
No, I mean, there wasn't much to say. It was okay, here's the guy. I'm here to weigh in. Fighting your guy. He was very professional, and at the time, I don't think he or any of the people there expected me to be able to beat him. I think they figured that Chris was gonna hook me up one way or the other and take me out. But well, that didn't happen. But nonetheless, he came up, shook my hand. He said, he just goes, "Hey, great job. We'd like it if you'd come back and fight again in the summer." So I said, "All right, now I got a goal."
Cool. So in our Dennis Hallman interview, when you talk about Josh Barnett, Dennis gets real serious. And he said that sometimes when there's bullies in the gym, he said, Josh got bullied in high school. And he's like, and if he sees a bully, he's like, man, dude, you do not want to be in the same room if Josh Barnett thinks that there's a bullying situation taking place. I mean, you're kind of a big guy. You wrestled. You like to fight. It's hard for me to wrap my head around that. Like you being bullied.
Bullied. It was just, it was something to do with being a very young child. And it wasn't so much that I was some unique particular victim to quote unquote bullying. Some of it was I was bigger than the other kids, so I call it the big brother syndrome, where you go and you mess with your big brother. You know he's going to get mad and come after you, and eventually he catches you and makes you cry, but you do it anyways. The very next day, I think there was some of that, and there was also just the fact that they could get a rise out of me. I wouldn't say super easily when I was a kid, but more easily than they should have been, or at least I should say, given better programming, better weapons to my disposal, you wouldn't necessarily have to get mad. But that's why you grow up and you learn things. And when you're, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 years old, you don't know shit, and emotionally or intellectually. But because I always had a deep-seated idea of like justice in my being, that if you haven't done anything to anybody else and you're not deliberately creating conflict, then I would just feel like, well, why are you coming after me? Why are you trying to hurt me in some way for what just seems like your own benefit? I mean, there's nothing to get out of if you wanted to rob me or do this or do that, but if you just wanted to belittle and demean me out of nowhere, and I would rise to the occasion and I'd get pissed, and eventually I'd say, look, you keep this up and I'm going to get you. And they would do it anyways, because we're all stupid little kids. But the thing was, I would get specifically and uniquely punished over it by all the administration over and over and over and over. And so it got to the point where my just feelings were that I had to take whatever came my direction, because if I didn't, the whole system was just going to keep smashing me and putting me on trial and taking away my benefits, which, let's say, by the time you get to high school, it's playing sports. That was my thing that I really loved most of all, because it was mine and I could do it, and I didn't have to deal with a lot of the other things that I've just found irritating and inane with the rest of the social things of life. I mean, when I was a kid, liking things like Dungeons and Dragons and role-playing games and anime got you ostracized, and heavy metal. Nowadays, you can be into all that stuff, and chicks that are models will come and dress up at your Comic-Cons and all this, all for the attention. Where back in the day, there was even a girl that wanted to even, I don't know, pick up a Magic the Gathering card deck or anything like that, it was a rarity. It just, nerds used to have to pay a price for being so nerdy. But just beyond that, I think it was really the key thing is I felt like my ability to stand up for myself was totally stripped away and oppressed. That I was just going to be smashed by a faceless bureaucratic system of adults that just don't want to have to deal with anything, that abhor and detest violence, yet will allow any other kind of disrespect or injury or anything that just somehow, if you didn't get into a fight, that this could be acceptable. And it just, I wasn't as if I felt like, people's words simply were capable of hurting you, but you definitely have scenarios where in a public setting, how others treat you is an example. How you allow others to treat you is how everyone else is going to treat you. And hey, man, when you're just a kid growing up, you're already struggling with enough stuff. So
yeah, no, for sure.
I just had to take a lot of shit for a long time, and for fear of just me being in trouble at the end of the day. Like, I mean, I'll tell you this: all the kids I got into fights with in grade school, not a single one of them ever paid a single price. Not one. Not one ever got suspended. Not one ever got in trouble. Not one had to go and sit in the principal's office and do their work. I always did. And it's not just because I won, but I mean, it's just that because I'm the one who that they would
a bigger kid. Yeah.
Well, they would, there's that. And then they would just, they essentially, they would just decide that I was the aggressor in one way or the other. And it's like, well, I wouldn't be punching him if he wasn't doing what he's doing. But at the same time, to them, like, there was no way you could ever punch anyone for anything. And it's like, well, that probably explains themselves.
Yeah. Cause and effect. Yeah. Where cause and effect is what took place there. So
it's actually early FAFO.
Right. So right, exactly. You actually taught a seminar here on the south side of Chicago
Oh, you know,
last year.
and one last thing, Dennis Hallman is while he's been a bully, I've seen plenty of times in his own way. I've seen him literally just turn red silently and take down people that were being bullies or trying to intimidate other people and stuff like that. Like guys that would have no idea who he was, anything, and just wreck them. So
I will say the relationship between Jeff Monson and Dennis Hallman, like we did an entire 2 hours just on their relationship. Like we hardly touched fights.
what, like talking to them at the same time?
No, just separately. Like Aaron Riley
Yeah.
came on, and it was one of our first interviews, kind of figuring things out. And we're like, yeah, what about Jeff Monson? And he went on for an hour of just of Jeff Monson and Dennis Hallman stories. And then after that, we're like, okay, well, I'll get Dennis Hallman and Jeff Monson. And Jeff was just like, no, it's true. Yeah, no. He took a shit in my shoes. Yeah, no. He did put all of my furniture on the roof of my house. No. He took the seat out of my car while I was at work, and I had to, drive home on like bags of leaves. I mean, it is.
He also once released like 1,000 crickets into Jeff's bedroom.
Yes, he told that too.
I mean, look, some of those things were pretty hilarious, but there was other stuff that I was like, man, this is just, it's not good, not healthy. So
he's just like, well, yeah, I took a broom and I took a poopy baby diaper and I shoved it down his, air conditioning thing. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah, just awful stuff. Those guys, yeah.
Yes. I'll tell you, as long as you're not in those crosshairs, fantastic listening.
Oh yeah, man, Jeff Munson's stories, man. I remember we got into the room in Abu Dhabi, and I don't know why. I turned around, hooked him up, and suplexed him full on German suplex onto the bed, and just annihilated, broke the whole bed out from underneath it. I don't know why, but I did. Yeah.
You actually, it's interesting. In December 2007 in the Philippines, the PFP. You were like the team captain. Jeff Monson was the heavyweight.
Yeah.
And you fined Jeff for being late to a team meeting.
Yep, I did. And that was because Jeff has, whether he wants to admit it or not, a chronic tendency to be late to things, to forget stuff, to just totally, you tell him, and then he'll show up missing shorts, he'll miss this, he'll be late to
Mouthpiece.
that. So constantly just whatever. So he was doing constantly late. And I told him, like, don't do it again or I'll fine you. I figured the threat would keep Jeff from being late. He would tighten it up and do it. And because I told him I'd fine him, I had to.
You had to.
It's like once you say it, you got to follow through. Yeah.
Can we mutually agree that Jeff is not a germ phobe?
Oh, not at all. No. God,
the opposite. I would say the opposite.
You just beg him to take a shower after training or something. It's like, good God, you smell like tomato soup. Ooh.
So we've had 3 fighters on here, and this is independent of us even like, oh yeah, Jeff Monson was in a car with you. Yeah, dude, it was weird. Like after my fight, he's in my gym bag and he's got my mouthpiece in his mouth, doesn't even rinse it off. And he's like, hey dude, I just need to use this. I'm going out there right now. Puts it down his mouth and he runs out, and then he wants to give it back to me afterward.
Oh yeah, that sounds like something Jeff would do. Jeff also, I was there when he fought at the Roseland. I forgot who his opponent was. So, and I've coached and cornered Jeff for many, many years and many fights, and fought him once, but which is also pretty fun.
Well, it was his next fight after you find him. To be honest,
was it?
To be honest, yes. So to be honest with you, I looked at it as you knew you were going to fight. You might be looking for that mental edge.
No, we weren't supposed to fight. It's just that they couldn't get opponents for either of us. So they hit me up Sengoku, and they're like, "Hey, would you fight Jeff?" And I'm like, "Oh, come on, like that. I train him, I coach him. Like this doesn't really make sense. I mean, I'll ask him because I'm not going to steal his opportunity to compete and make money. And you know, I don't go out there to lose to anybody. But if I get on the wrong side of something and it's my friend, at least I made him money. So
Yeah,
we're there to fight." So I called Jeff up and I basically said the same thing. I was like, "Look, man, I'm not going to take the fight unless you tell me to, but I'm not going to tell you that you can't make money. And a fight's a fight, and it's fine. But it's not going to hurt my feelings whatsoever. But I wanted to defer to you." And he's like, "No, okay, yeah, I'll do it." And I just go, "Okay, well, train hard, dude, and I'll see you in the ring." And simple as that. And although I knew so much about Jeff, I could get away with doing so many things in the ring. And I remember we got him in the corner, and Laborio is coaching at him. I'm like, "That's not going to work. He's not going to do that." Nah. And Laborio was laughing. I'm just saying. Yeah. And then Jeff got a takedown in the first round. He got on top, and he's trying to punch at me. I'm just going, "Ow, ow, why are you trying to hurt me? I'm your friend." I'm just messing with him. And he actually said it got into his head, and I was like,
he said it here
around, man. I'm like, yeah,
he said it here on our podcast.
I was just screwing around.
He's like, it affected me.
I was just screwing around with him.
He said it affected me.
Well, it's just I when I get a roll on Jeff, man, I get into his head even without stuff like that. And so then I went to town on him and tried to submit him, but not to be that night.
Dennis Hallman was in your corner. So, like, when we had Jeff on, I'm like, dude, this has got to be bad blood.
Dennis was not for that fight. No, Dennis wasn't in my corner for that fight.
I'm almost positive he was.
It would have been it would have been Stitch Duran, and
I got Stitch Duran, Dennis Hallman.
No, it would have been Erik Paulson.
You know what? It was kind of like a far away thing. So it's possible. Okay.
Erik Paulson.
Okay. That's fair.
Because we had a bet, and Eric's like, "Look, if you hit anybody with a full on ridge hand chop, you get was it $20 or $100 or something like that?" So I had taken Jeff down. I got into his guard and I started doing this. And Eric's like, "That doesn't count. That doesn't count. It's got to be standing." And I'm just karate chopping Jeff in the face.
Dude, I'm kind of going off track here. Speedo Gate with Dennis Hallman and Brian Ebersol. Did you know
he just wore the wrong stuff? No, I had no idea. No.
Okay.
He just wore the wrong stuff. Really, he just needed to wear better trunks, and he'd have been fine.
He said it was a bet. He lost a bet. It was like some dude would have to bang some 7-year-old named Griselda, or he'd have to wear Speedos, and he had to honor his bet. I'm like, okay, I believe you. Okay, before I get off track, you taught a seminar here on the south side of Chicago at Crimson Guard, Matt Giancarlo's school. I cannot tell you the rave reviews that came from that seminar. Everybody was talking about it.
Oh, well, that makes me pretty happy. I know one of their female fighters, maybe she just grapples, man. She hit the head and arm Keza, and then rolled it into the Boss Rutan crunch. It was great. Won a match with it. I think maybe even won a tournament. It was fantastic. And I love hearing about stuff like that when people put to effect the stuff that I'm showing them. And I was supposed to be out there 2 weeks ago, no, last week or something, I believe, but I had to postpone because Victor Henry, my bantamweight fighter, he fought last Saturday. So that got in the way of
in the UFC.
And I had to fly to Japan and I had to fly to Japan to promote my next show because we had a press conference and all this other stuff. So everything got in the way. But yeah, great school, cool place. I went to the deep dish spot around the corner. Not bad.
Yeah, oh, for sure. Why don't you talk about the influence that Rigan Machado has on you and your skill set?
I wish I had more time training under Higan, but he just simple stuff for the most part, and we all live by the mantra of be as heavy as possible when on top. And Higan is a great weight, and when he gets on top of you, man, he really magnifies how he feels. He just completely crushes you. He helped Erik Paulson with that kind of concept, and Erik's helped me a lot. And when you can do it, man, it really goes a long way towards taking that. It's like an extra attack, in addition to being able to hand fight and look for something, a particular limb or what have you. Just having your weight distributed on a guy and essentially hurting them in one way or another, it's a win. It makes your job a whole lot easier. And I'm pretty proud that after Erik had me go through and he had me teaching gi jiu-jitsu and demoing holds and chokes and maneuvers and things like that, it met Higan's standards.
You used to compete in mutually agreed upon combat with people you met online.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it says on your Wikipedia page. Could you describe some
That's
of those
true.
interactions?
Yeah. At the University of Montana, I would find guys who maybe they're all talking about getting into a dust up out in the bars, or someone hitting the heavy bag, or people up on the old wrestling mats upstairs doing martial arts or anything like that. And I would just go up to them casually and start talking about fighting. Like, oh, you ever watch a UFC? What do you think about that? Yeah, I think it's pretty damn cool too. It's really something I aspire to do. Hey, you want to fight? It just look at me like, what? But yeah, some folks were down for it. And I would just fight people who were willing to fight. And I just knew that I needed more experience before I went back in the summer to fight at AMC again. After my last fight with Chris Charnos, I thought, well, the only way to really get better is to try and get that time under your belt. So that's exactly what I did. And sometimes it would involve going on like an AOL chat board and talking, fighting, and there'd be these chat rooms. Would be really into MMA at the time. We're talking 1997, so it's still pretty young, but the resources to access it, from just the entertainment side to the technical side, to finding schools and instructors and all that kind of stuff, you could navigate your way through the internet back then for sure and find quite a bit of stuff if you knew where to look. And some of it would be because people were aggregating the information, if they were getting the results from the Japanese fight cards, or getting it on satellite, or have a friend in Japan doing tape trading and all this kind of stuff. And some of it is, these schools would start advertising whether or not that they would have fighters or any sort of programs, but it was still really few and far between. So you go on a chat board, it's just more information exchange. But another thing guys used to do is just be like, hey, I'm traveling 3 years through this city or what have you. Anybody, I weigh this much, I've had this many matches in my record. Would you be interested in fighting? So guy was like, yeah, would you be interested when you come back to Seattle, meeting me in for a match? Like,
Josh, hold on.
I'll do it.
Josh, hold on. Joey, can you imagine telling your old lady, I'm going to go fight this guy I met on the internet? You come home all fucked up, and then all of a sudden the guy's fighting for the UFC heavyweight title. You're like, honey, I told you. I told you he was legit. I mean, that's nightmarish. It's nightmarish.
It sounds psychotic.
Back then I was
today.
just a 19-year-old kid. Just a 19-year-old kid then. So, but
That's so
it's just the stuff that you do when the opportunities don't really exist. I mean, it's just not like you could go
create your own
fight
opportunity
anywhere. And you couldn't, I mean, most of the gyms didn't really have an MMA program or anything like that. There wasn't really like what you would call professional gyms that were very accessible. They were very few and far between. So, you did what you did. And it felt like back in that day, it felt like Street Fighter 2.
Yeah. Your parents must have had their hands full. I think, as a 19-year-old kid picking fights online, your parents must have had their hands full.
I didn't tell him this stuff. Although my dad was a notorious street fighter, so as long as I was kicking the shit out of people, he'd been fine with it.
Okay, that's fine. Fair enough. So your first fight was Chris Charnos. He's 2-1, fought in Hawaii, a lot of experience. Obviously, you win the head fight with a rear naked choke. Your second
front
fight,
choke.
Oh, front choke. Oh, okay. It's an RNC. Your second fight against Bob Gilstrap. I tell you, we've had Bob on this show. Bob likes to fight, and there's no doubt about it. Now, his skill set might not be through the roof in certain components of it, but the guy legit is he's a bad boy. Bob Gilstrap's tough, and that's your second fight. I think they were using you as a body at this point.
I think Matt wanted to see if I could beat Chris in 2 minutes and choke him unconscious, then how would I do against Gilstrap, who was originally an AMC fighter, but he left with Maurice Smith and a group of guys. Then they made up Maurice Smith Kickboxing, so that was the rival school at the time for us. So it wasn't AMC versus Maurice at this point, but what it was is some guy who they don't know, he just said he's from Montana, which I'm from Ballard, but yeah, they're just like, there's some wrestler guy from Montana who beat Chris Charnos, so let's just see what happens if you throw him in there with Bob. And I just ragdolled him the whole time. I do remember though, like I trained at AMC maybe a week before the match, like a little bit, like I went in there, I was invited, I went in, grappled a bit and what have you. And I just remember getting leg locked over and over again by like Doug Murphy and maybe somebody, maybe Todd Bjornethun, and just being like, oh, this guy used to train here and this guy is a part of, oh, well, I better be way careful about getting in any submission stuff. And, looking back on it, it's like, man, I totally probably could have, I really feel like I could have subbed him if I'd really been working for it back then. But I was being far more cautious against, again, even Chris Charnos threw a toehold on me in our first match, and I'm like, I don't know what that is, but I'm not going to let him do it. However that's going to work. So I just want to go out there. I want to get that win.
Todd Bjornethun.
What's that?
Todd Bjornethun.
Well, yeah. Todd Bjornethun. He was a
legend
guy I used to train with all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. You look at his record. That record, you can't fake that, man. That guy's legit.
It'd have been better than that too if he had prematurely retired due to a false hepatitis test.
Yeah.
That's very unfortunate. But he's doing well for himself these days. And Todd seems like things are going great. And it makes me super happy to know.
We might have him on
the anyways,
line.
Bob.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Todd's got stories. Oh, my God.
Yeah. I think we got him lined up.
Yeah, he's
communicating with him.
Man.
Yeah. So Gilstrap, tough guy, UFC 17 vet. He's with Maurice Smith. Not an easy fight for you. It's also obviously your second fight.
Actually, it was a pretty easy fight. He never got any striking off on me whatsoever on the feet, because I just constantly shoot on him and take him down, or get a body lock, just pick him up and just ragdolled him all over the place. And just kept attacking, basically like top wrist lock on him. And it is very simple stuff, but just ground and pound and just wrestling, just threw him all over the place. He just really couldn't stop me from doing whatever I wanted to do for the most part.
So when you roll with Matt Hume and you guys are starting to get to know each other, we've had a few fighters on here talk about an instance when after practice was done, Matt said, hey, man, I kind of want to roll with you. And it's almost like a rite of passage where Matt kind of shows you what he's made of. And it sounds pretty nightmarish. Did you ever experience that with him?
Oh, yeah. Of course, I was with him for I think 8 years. So early on, I remember doing clinch sparring work and him tie plumbing me and knee catching me in the liver with a knee, dropping me, and me like just like just letting it all just hang out on the floor there, and him just being continuing to knee me, bam, bam, get up, get up, get up. It's like if I lay there, just gonna keep getting kneed in the head, the body, whatever. So I better find a way to pick it up and get back into the fight. And I remember Doug Murphy low kicked me to the point that I couldn't hardly pick up my left leg because I couldn't beat his timing on his kicks, and yeah, he was just a much better fighter than me at the time. And yeah, I've had all kinds of ass weapons at AMC. When I was a young guy. Although, funny enough, there was a couple guys there that were pros. There wasn't like a ton of them, but there were a couple guys there I could submit from day one, and most all the guys in the classes I could run ram shot off of. But it was like, okay, so Todd, Doug, and Matt, these are the best grapplers in the gym. So I'm gonna aim to try and be able to beat everyone, all of them at some point, And it was, to me, it was like an indication that the training and the dedication, the time was settling in. And yeah, Matt always being the ultimate goal there because he was just so damn good. And he said in Japan they would all aim to know more and better submissions than Karl Gotch if possible. So in a sense, Matt was my Karl Gotch in that way.
Have you looked at Matt's pancreas fights, Matt Hume?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. And I want to say this as respectful as possible because Matt Hume, in terms of trainers, he's one of my heroes. Like, I admire him. Like Erik Paulson, Matt Hume, those are two people in my top 3 all time ever. But when I look at Matt Hume's record, sometimes it doesn't pass the sniff test because I think Matt Hume's better than what his record is.
No, well, I would say that Matt's record is as you would expect, knowing his timeline, and that is Matt was under the same issues as I was, but even earlier than that, with trying to find the way to develop a mixed martial arts skill set and to combine everything and to come up with all these different new stratagems and techniques. And Matt is an insane athlete. He was a wrestler. I think he wrestled D3 or NAI or something. I think he wrestled at Central. That's where he met Bjornethun, and they would go after each other in wrestling all the time. But and they would go after each other in the gym all the time. Boy, it was just the number one thing was for them to mess with each other constantly. The Bjornethun had come by and Matt sitting in front of the television. Why do you sit like that? Why are you sitting on your foot like that? And just like stop it, and just get into a fight over the way Matt was sitting on his foot. The stupid things. It was great. But Matt grew into becoming what he is now. And yeah, that happened by just being sent into, like, pancreas was high level stuff back then. And Matt was still getting in there. He's a good athlete. But by being in pancreas, Matt got this blueprint from the shoot wrestling, catch wrestling side of things. Then he started infusing his own stuff into it, training under Harushi Manishi, and then Matt's own way of self-learning, being an autodidact that he is, he just starts putting all these things together as a grappler and getting better and better and better. In fact, I always felt like there was a period that Matt should have been competing and he would have really been just hell on wheels. But, at the time, he just, I guess it just didn't call to him as much, I guess, to do it.
And I'm being respectful. Like, a 500 pancreas record means you're a pretty badass guy. I mean, because those pancreas records, like the fights that those guys had, there was never really an easy fight. But when I look up his fight with Suzuki, DeLucia to a certain degree, or Yamada, I just think that maybe he was forced to do a work. And that's just me being a fanboy. This is
No, I
not
mean, you
me
got to
being
understand those guys
disrespectful.
were really good. You got to understand how
Yeah.
good those guys were back then. Suzuki was a much better grappler than Matt at that point in terms of submissions. Suzuki was he was like at the Japanese national level in freestyle wrestling. And he trained directly under Gotch, and he trained with him and Funaki were training partners. So he knew way more about submission than Matt did back then. And DeLucia just was a big physical guy. It was a weird fight. Like Matt ended up accidentally kicking DeLucia in the nuts like 3 times because DeLucia being a southpaw, and he would throw a side kick as Matt would throw a round kick, and then bang, you get kicked right in the groin.
Yeah.
And I think DeLucia, he might have lost by a lost point or like a heel hook, but it was like just basically that these guys, like the Lions Den guys too, were just better at those heel hooks and things like that than Matt was back then. And it just took Matt being there to spend that time in it, and over time, and Matt also got to work with other people. I believe he got to work with Sayama too. Man, his level just kept going and going and going and going and going and going. Plus, DeLucia was bigger than Matt. I guess they were all relatively the same size, but Matt, he's very adept at bodybuilding. He can put on weight and get bigger and leaner. He was really good at that, and he was like a junior bodybuilder as well. I think he won some stuff as a teenager. But Matt could get up to like 180, 190, but he's much better suited down at, say, like 170 or under. Even though, like I said, he could get big like that because he had huge legs and he had a very broad back and big shoulders. So, but he just got better with time. And Yamada was a Shuto guy before a Pancrase, so he had tons of experience. A win over Yamada would have been huge.
And please keep in mind, you're talking to a Matt Hume fanboy. This is me like wanting him to be the undefeated badass, coming back to the United States and competing in Japan. Absolutely no disrespect on that whatsoever.
It just wasn't possible really back then. But the thing is, Matt wasn't coming into this as a guy who was like completely weighted in one direction, like let's say a Hickson or Maurice. Well, Maurice actually was an early cross trainer, to be honest, but or let's say like a kickboxing champion, which would have been bad in MMA back then, or Mark Coleman, who was so severely weighted in wrestling. Matt was a strong wrestler, good Thai boxer, excellent athlete, martial artist, but his mindset wasn't towards just becoming one of these things, but to become a complete and total package. And that was a complex puzzle to solve back then. And I think Matt made incredible strides in the pursuit of that kind of training ideal. But it was just taking him time. And like I said, I feel like there was a point in probably the late 90s where, like around the win over Miletich, like he was really coming into his strongest point, but he didn't have the desire to keep going out and fighting necessarily, and maybe he just felt the juice wasn't worth the squeeze as well, because you start really getting known and ranked like that. And I think Matt was considered like one of the best guys in his weight class after beating Pat Miletich.
Oh yeah.
Maybe he just felt like it just wasn't worth it if he wasn't.
He transitioned.
Getting something.
He transitioned. He transitioned to be a coach. One of the greatest ever. Some would argue.
I do remember Miletich. He didn't want to stop the fight because of the broken nose, but it was pretty mashed. But I remember Pat was saying to me one time, he goes, the getting kneed in the face was whatever. That, I could have kept fighting, and I don't feel like they should have stopped the fight and all this. And he goes, however, as long as I didn't get low kicked like that, like he did to me ever again, I would have taken all the knees to the face the world had to offer. And I remember Matt telling me about this before Pat tells me this story, and that is Matt went out there and they're kind of touching around, and he steps in and he throws a purposefully weak right low kick. and Pat doesn't check it, takes it, and he's just like, but makes a good slap because, it's not shin cutting through. But Matt's doing this on purpose. And Pat said, now referencing back to Pat's story, is this Colo kit comes out and it ain't shit on it. So he's like, oh, I'm just gonna mash through this guy. And so he's going, and Matt's idea is he's not going to check. He's going to think he doesn't have to check. And he sets something up, and he drops a real Matt Hume low kick on him. And maybe, I don't remember if Pat tried to touch him on it or either way, but Pat just said, the next one, though, felt like his whole leg wanted to explode. And he just was like, oh, God, I don't ever want to get kicked like that again. Yeah, Matt had brutal low kicks, man, just nasty ones. I have all kinds of little tricks I got from him on how to make people's lives suck.
Yeah, Monty Cox, fixture of the Midwest. Whenever his guys would fight one of Hume's guys, like the anger coming out of his mouth, because Matt is just such a master game planner. He's just like, oh fuck, we're fighting a Hume guy.
And Matt's never going to let anything slide either. So if you come in 0.2 over, he's going to make you cut it, or he's going to be like, we're leaving. He's going to be
literally leave and actually leave.
Athletes.
Yeah, he'll actually leave. Yeah.
He'll be all in on advocating for his athlete. So that's just the way it was.
Let's talk about Abu Dhabi. You were at the first ever Abu Dhabi, February 24th, 1998. How did you get the invite?
I think Matt just put my name up, and based on the word of Matt to the Prince, the Sheikh, was good enough. And I also had an undefeated MMA record at the time too, so that didn't hurt. And I had won the Super Bowl 13 tournament.
Yes. Well, you were at 1998. Super Bowl was 99. So the 98 was the first one ever. Was it when you were roommates with Jeff Monson?
I wasn't at 98. Yeah. No, Jeff Monson went to the second one.
Okay. So the second one with Jeff Monson, was Dennis Hallman with you there as well?
Yes.
So Dennis Hallman tells a real interesting story about Mark Kerr, who also was your opponent.
Mm-hmm.
You remember anything about Mark Kerr? This is kind of like maybe when Mark was starting to bottom
he was
out.
Just so much bigger and stronger and more athletic. I mean, he just wouldn't give. He got a takedown on me, clearly. I'm just playing. I should play way too much close guard now in retrospect, but still learning. But I had a nice triangle attempt on him, and he really had to fight hard to get out of that one. He manages to pass and get to north-south, and I just remember he just settled there and wouldn't do anything. Just stalled. Just stalled. Just wasn't going to attack, wasn't going to move. And I couldn't figure out couldn't get him out from on top of me. And I lost by decision. I'm like, this sucks. This is crap.
He was also struggling with addiction at this point, Mark Kerr. Do you remember any of his? Probably. Do you remember anything outside of the tournament that was taking place with him at that time?
No, not really.
Okay, that's fair. Dan Severn, you fought him in Super Bowl 16. 1 week prior to your fight, he actually gave a public statement that he will never be armbarred ever.
Okay.
Do you remember that?
I guess that. No, I don't remember that.
Yes.
I don't.
Yeah. But, I just watched it in preparation for this. Yep. How did you beat him?
Armbar in the fourth round.
And the Super Bowl tournament you're talking about, Juha Takasari, John Marsh, and Bobby Hoffman. Mm-hmm. I mean,
that's a hell of a lineup. Heath Herring's in this tournament too.
Yeah, he lost to Bobby in the second round after beating Rico Battistini.
Yeah, Marsh is legit too.
Battistini.
Yeah.
Yes,
Marsh is legit.
He was a training partner of mine for some time when I was in Pride. Yeah, he's a great guy.
Yeah, no, for sure. in the 2000 ADCC, it must have sucked because you went there. Your first draw is Mark Kerr. Obviously, he wins the entire tournament. Mm-hmm. And then the absolute, you get Ricardo Almeida. You couldn't have two worse draws.
Shit trip. No, it was a shit trip. I shouldn't have even been there. And to be honest, I wasn't scheduled to. So I didn't train. I wasn't training at all, really. I mean, I was in the gym, but I wasn't training like you have an event coming up. And I was out of shape. And then last second, Matt's like, "Oh, you're going?" I'm like, "Well, fuck it. I'll just go." And my one goal with Mark Kerr was don't let him get north-south, whatever you do, because if he gets north-south, just you cannot let him stall you out. He will stall you to the end of time if you let him. So he got a takedown on me, and I was looking for stuff and baiting him things. I even baited him to take mount, and he either didn't or was there for a second and then crawled off of me. Like he just knew I had all kinds of submissions he was just not going to mess with. And at some point, he manages to get north-south, and I fight with everything I got to make sure he doesn't get it. And doing so, left my arm behind, and he double wrist locked me. And I'm like, I didn't even think, I gave no consideration that Mark Kerr might do a submission to me. Even though if you thought about it, clearly you'd be like, well, he knows some. I know he does. I've seen him go for him in some fights. But yeah, I just completely, I put all my eggs in one basket, and then, he just tells me it's not even Easter. So, oh well. And then with Almeida, it was like, fine, I'll go on the absolute, and just blew up, out of shape. Almeida made a real fast-paced game, and when he jumped in on that front choke, I just too out of shape, had to tap.
Wow. Your UFC debut, UFC 28 against Dan McGee. Was this also a last-minute fight for you?
No, this one actually was something that I had a full camp to prepare for and everything.
Okay. I mean, that guy's huge. Dan McGee is a giant human, like a very tall human.
Yeah, he was. That was the first and only super heavyweight, or maybe that was the first super heavyweight fight in UFC history. And I think I weighed like 250 something, but
Chief Andre Roberts, wasn't he prior to this?
I think Andre Roberts fought when heavyweight was unlimited.
Okay. All right. Pedro Rizzo.
When I came in, that's a heavyweight bout. But yeah, Dan McGee, 6'10", 312. He was monstrous.
Jesus.
No, he's just a ginormous.
And he annihilated. The same like I was one of the last people picked in a poll on the Underground Forum on the original one for the Super Brawl tournament, and I won that. And then everybody picked Dan McGee because he was an 8-0 D1 All-American wrestler, and he'd smashed everyone with no effort. Like, okay. And then he fought me, and we had to change things.
So, Josh, do you still go to the Underground Forum?
No, I've been there a long time.
Dude, it's fantastic. It's actually still very good. Believe it or not. It's still very good, believe it or not.
Right.
Yeah, I go there. I started going there probably about a year ago. It's phenomenal. Still phenomenal.
I am one of the original signups to the new Full Contact and the Underground. So I've been there since I'm one of the day ones on that stuff. And I used to be on the combat list too, back in the day, on an email list.
Yeah. John Fitz just came over. Actually, a lot of the old school fighters are now starting to go back there. It's the same jaded brilliance that it was back then. It's still there. It's fantastic. Pedro Rizzo. Josh, at UFC 30, Pedro Rizzo has had an incredible reputation as a kickboxer, Muay Thai guy, and you stood and traded with him. I was shocked at that, to be honest with you.
Yeah, everybody was. But eventually I was supposed to try to take him down, but I just got a little too greedy with my success there. And it's one of the reasons why I teach my students that even if you can beat a guy at what he's best at, no matter how hard it and how bad it's going for him, he still will believe that he has a chance to win because that's what he knows most of all. And if given an opportunity, if you asked him to turn this fight around, what would he do? He would go right to his feet and go right to his strengths, which in this case, kickboxing. And he did. He just flat out caught me with a perfectly timed setup, and down you go.
All right. So just so everybody understands, Pedro Rizzo at this time, Marco, who is prodigy. He's a four-time Brazilian Muay Thai champion, national champion. And usually when you fare against guys like that, the smart move is to counter punch. Josh lead punched and landed at least 12 heavy punches. And Bruce Beck even said, I'm going to quote it here, "I have never seen anyone go toe-to-toe with Rizzo this long." It was a heroic effort, bro. It was unbelievable.
There was a moment that maybe victory could have been found. I'll never know because I didn't capitalize on it. But we broke out of a clinch and I clipped him with an elbow to the temple. And on the video, you see he steps and his foot wobbles. And so I thought, in retrospect, I think, if I jumped on him at that moment, maybe I could have dropped him. It was really hard to take Rizzo out. Like he had an iron chin. But I didn't realize that, and Matt had even pointed out, like, I didn't notice that I hurt him with the elbow. And in any case, I should have been pressuring him into the wall, using the cage to my advantage. But that's youth. And still, I took the technique that he used to knock me out and integrated it into my own skills. So I learned a lot from that. Plus, I made a friend for life.
I will tell you, it's a heroic effort. Like it is. I just watched it again the other day. It's shocking. It's dude. It's a phenomenal display of just grit, fortitude, and somebody beating somebody that's best in the world at their own game. Unbelievable performance.
No, thank you.
Semmy Schilt, another 7-footer. It's your next opponent, dude. You're not getting any easy draws, man.
No, and we weren't asking for him either. I would imagine, and perhaps this was the case, and I'm forgetting, but sure, Matt was asking for these guys too, and it's like, yeah, man, line them up. I'll take them out. I want to get a chance at the title because it's going to be mine.
So Semmy Schilt was the current king of Pancrase at this time, and he's 19-9-1, and that's a Japanese 19-9-1, which, I mean. The guy's as tough as they got. Nightmare stand-up too.
He had to go through the fire. Yeah, he had to go through the fire of being an early MMA adopter himself, and eventually became a full-fledged MMA guy. But he came from a full contact karate style called Daidojuku. So they had throws and trips, and you could do submissions in it, but you had very limited time on the ground. But it's kind of famous because they wear these helmets with these little bubble plastic clear face masks, and you can groin as long as the weight's within a certain parameter. Like there's not, because they would also fight open weight, but as long as the weight is within a certain scale, you could groin shot and headbutt people in the face with this helmet on, and you could attack the groin too. So it's pretty gnarly stuff. You can, if you want to watch more of it in a modern sense, look up Kudo. That's what the sparring competition sparring is called. It's called Kudo, and that's what they refer to it in like Russia and Eastern Europe, where it has really taken off. And they still hold the World Kudo Championships or something of that nature, and that all stems from Daidojuku. So that's where Semmy Schilt came from. Also, I don't know, a pair of giants, I suppose, must have birthed him out there in the north of the Netherlands.
That guy's out of a laboratory. He doesn't have a mouth. That guy was made in a laboratory.
He hit Pete Williams with this nasty
body kick,
ball of the foot kick right into the liver, and that was all she wrote. We're like, okay, well, don't get hit with that. And I remember there was a session where Matt did he have somebody sitting on top of somebody else's shoulders or he at least had like a long pipe with like a one of those cheesy foam batons and from those old school martial arts gear places, and he was poking it at me, and I had to try and get in distance on this thing. We're just figuring stuff out, and yeah, I shot it on Semmy as soon as he threw a kick, and put him to the ground. And I remember I gift wrapped him with Neon Belly. And I remember BJ Penn was there. He fought on that same card. And after the fight, he was like, "Oh my God, dude, you're amazing. I can't believe like the stuff you were doing." I go, "Wow, I fight." So I gift wrapped him with the Neon Belly. I thought I was going to make it my moment. He managed to get out of it, squirm. And so I just dropped down to side control and transitioned him out. And he just chips a little elbow, just nothing. And he clips me around the eyebrow. And all of a sudden, it's just bleeding like mad. I'm just going, "Oh, come on, really?" And I'm in mount, and I'm punching and elbowing him, and he's throwing his hands up, and I'm getting through there, but I know time's running out, and this blood is just dripping down my eye, and I don't know how bad it is. I don't want to get stopped in between rounds, so I'm like, I got to take this guy out. Matt's telling me, the time as we go, and I go to spin for the armbar, and my foot gets kind of stuck under his body a bit when I rotate. I don't get the leg over the head right away, and he rolls up into me, and it's like, oh, shit. So now I finally re-scoot the leg and get the arm, and Sem's kind of trying to punch me, and there's blood from his face pouring all over mine and on my leg, and I'm just getting a hold of this wrist and tracking this arm close to my chest. I'm just trying to find angle, and then eventually I pull at the thumb sideways and put what I call a crooked arm bar on, and it just starts tearing the ligament in the outside of his elbow. And he tumbles, and he falls over in dramatic fashion and taps out. There's blood all over my face. It's mine and Semmy's. There's blood all over my leg and body. It's Semmy's mostly, and I guess some on mine too. It must have been just covered in blood. And I stand up, and I wipe all this blood off of my hands, and I lick it from my gloves and my fingers, and do the throat cut. And I remember Dana being asked about that, and him being like, "Oh, I'm not really into that stuff. I'm not so sure what the hell's going on there." And people called me disgusting, and I was gross, and oh my God, what you might get the disease, something. It was just in the moment.
BJ Penn stole that. And BJ Penn stole that from you.
I don't know. He was there that night.
Yeah. One of your trainers that I think goes largely underappreciated is Billy Robinson. Would you mind telling our audience about your experience with him?
Well, I heard about this old school pro wrestler who was staying out in Japan, and he was training people out of the UWF Snake Pit in Koenji. And he was a catch wrestler from the Snake Pit in Wigan, England, and he's just legendary grappler, very talented, and a legendary professional wrestler. So I was a huge fan of the UWF, so I knew about the Snake Pit gym, and I wanted to go there anyways to see Miyato and maybe train with like Takayama and whoever might be there. And through that, I eventually got to meet Billy, and he was very interested right off the bat because, I was a UFC heavyweight champion. I was a full-born fighter now moving into wrestling. So he was just really curious as to see like, okay, well, let's see what your skills are. And he'd have me wrestle with people, and I'd take one guy out, take the next guy out, just hooking them up. And he's just watching, not to see whether I could win or lose, but he's watching how do I go about it? What are the techniques that I use? And, from there he gets an idea of who I am as a grappler, and he just kept teaching me ever since. And I would show up sometimes they'd have me teach class, but I'm always getting private time with Billy alone afterwards, and Miyato-san would be with me too. And then eventually Hideki Suzuki, who is one of Billy's best taught students, and he's an incredible pro wrestler himself, and he teaches catch wrestling in Japan on the side. But also I was telling Billy, like, I come from Gotch lineage where the guys he trained my coach. Matt Hume. And so I have a catch wrestling background through this other side of the lineage, but you guys trained together at the Snake Pit or came from the same school. So, being someone that had that background, of course, he wanted to see, well, all right, see it in action and see what you know.
And September 24th, 2001, Pride 16, you find yourself in the corner of Mark Coleman when he fights Nogueira. Mm-hmm. The look of just, you looked so pissed off at Coleman at that fight. You couldn't hide it. You were so mad.
We worked on that to not get caught into those kind of scenarios. And honestly, I was there for Mark. I wanted him to go out there and kick ass. I wanted him to show that he's not just a Grand Prix winner. He's the champ. And he didn't have the best training camp. Plus, he didn't. I didn't really get much time to work with him. Just about a week, or maybe a little more than. But we should have been training together longer than that. And yeah, I guess the frustration must have been evident. But man, Mark's a legend, and Mark's a hero. An incredible athlete, great at telling stories, just an absolute fun to be around, and a lovely individual that I'm glad he has mended from that harrowing house fire situation. Yeah, it's always it's always good to think about all the fond memories of Mark.
He's one to lean into a street fight too. Like he enjoys a good street fight.
He can get fired up. That's true. He'll get the blood will get pumping, and he's like, why not? All right, yeah, I'm here for it now. Like Mark goes through levels of firing up. It's stacks. It's not like somebody like gets mad, starts calculating. No, Mark just starts and it builds up. And then it's like, oh, you should poke the bear there. I do tell Mark though, I go, look, man, one of these days, finally going to get a takedown on you. I don't care if you're in a wheelchair. I'll tip it over and call two.
He takes such pride in that. Like people not being like Kevin Randleman never be able to take him down. Yeah, John Jones. He even beat John Jones in a takedown contest at UFC 100. Embarrassed John Jones.
He was a phenomenal wrestler. I learned my front headlock work from him. Like, man, he is such a beast with that front headlock. And I getting to train with Mark was, even back then, even though I was there to help Mark as a total fighter and as a submission guy, it was Mark Coleman. It was so dope, like so fucking cool.
Yeah, Randleman, Sims, the whole circus, the whole Hammer House circus, man, phenomenal. Yeah.
I feel bad for all the people that will never know what that kind of era was like, and they don't know Randleman. They know about Coleman now, but you don't know Coleman, and you don't know Dom Fry really. You weren't there around all these different guys. You just it's not at all like it is now. It was a completely different animal. And while people were really starting to make some money, it's just way different. We were all intermingled with each other, and you could be killing this guy or killing that guy, or him killing you any given moment. Because K1 guys, you might be training with them. Like I was training with like Michael McDonald and other people at the K1 gym, and training Bob Sapp for K1, and then making relationships with like Ray Seppo and Peter Ertz and Hoost, and we're just a part of all this stuff. But the training is happening, and at any moment, nope, you're gonna fight. Why don't you fight Ernesto Hoost in this mixed rules bout, or like a kickboxing match? Stuff was happening all the time, and
in the locker room.
Didn't know where the opportunity.
Yeah.
Well, that could happen too, but I mean, but generally it was like, no, you could be pulled in to fight Hoost in kickboxing. You could fight Peter Ertz in MMA. You could be fighting Don Fry one week or Boss Rutan, or you didn't know, because you didn't know where these events were going to come from. You didn't know where the matchmaking was going to go. It was just a very more wide open playing field.
And match made in the locker room.
And
sometimes like day of the event. Okay, well, you're just going to fight Ernesto Hoost in the mixed. Yeah, rules.
It could happen. Yeah. Well, sure. But even with Pride being the thing that it was then, or even the UFC was trying to streamline a lot more, but they had you could tell that they were kind of working off of some semblance of a schedule and a ranking of sorts. But you still, a guy can just be brought in and boom, that's who you're fighting.
You fought Bobby Hoffman at UFC 34. He was 28-4-1. Bobby Hoffman scared a lot of people. Yeah, dude, he scared a lot of people. He scared a lot of people.
Sure.
You know, and do you remember what you said to him before? Do you remember what you said to him before the fight started?
Nah. What did I say?
Oh, come on, Josh. Dude, come on, Josh. This is so good, bro. You were like, bring it, Bobby. Bring it. Like, you know, like you're bullying the bully. You're bullying the bully, dude. It was phenomenal.
I liked Bobby. We were cool. Because we had already fought in Super Brawl 13 in the finals of that tournament. So it was no big deal. Like, I know Bobby will try and kill you, even if he does like you. Like that's no promise, right? Like, oh, he's your friend. He'll be nice to you. No. And I wouldn't have expected anything less from any opponent of mine anyways. So I guess if I said it, I said it. I just remember I forgot. Oh yeah, I took Bobby down right away and mounted him, but he managed to bridge and roll me. And then I was like chasing arm bars and knee bars and different stuff on him. And I think I ended the round on my feet, kneeing him in the guts or something, just bashing him up a bit. I walked back to the corner. I remember Matt's there, and he goes, "All right, so how you doing?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm cool. Yeah, he did this and that. Yeah. All right. Well, hey, just knee the leg again a little bit. He'll pick his knee up, hit that knee sweep. It'll be super easy. All right. Okay, I'll see you in a bit. Bye." That was our conversation in the corner. And I went out there, knee swept him, put the cross side choke on him, split him open with elbows, pounded him with the fist. He turned into me. I had a near side grapevine. I just wrist rode or spiral rode and just like uppercuts under the armpit and just really wrecked him good. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been trying to track him down. I there's just no record of him anywhere. Not even.
I think he went to prison.
I've looked. I've really, unless he changed his name, I can't find him.
He definitely went to prison. I don't know if he's still there or not.
Yeah, at this time, like he left MFS. You know, ladies and gentlemen, if I'm going to give you guys some advice, if you're going to leave like threatening, like if you want to threaten somebody's life, you don't do it on their answering machine. That's the only thing I can tell you.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And Monty and all them are like, please beat the shit out of this guy. You have no idea what we've been through. Like, all right.
Don't do it on the answering machine. That's my only advice. That's it.
He's a loose cannon, though. But this is the early days of MMA. People like that, like, you have no idea. Like Bobby Hoffman would absolutely cave your face in or do something wild. Like it.
So right around this time, I met Bobby several times, and Bobby was on psych medication, and he would stop taking it about 2 or 3 days before the event. Not kidding. Yeah, that's what Bobby's trick was. At least that's what he would say.
Yeah. He would, and he was made it to the practice squad for Cleveland Browns or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Right around this time, Bob Sapp was making.
Oh, here's another Bobby Hoffman. He had his mouth open, and Maurice hit him with an uppercut, Maurice Smith, and almost bit through his whole tongue. Almost bit through it the whole way. And in the corner, he's trying to pull it out of his mouth, trying to pull his tongue off. And people are like, no, because he's like, it's in the way. That's Bobby Hoffman.
Jesus.
Man would pull his own tongue out to win a fight.
So that fight was in Vegas, and you had an interaction with you had a drug test where you received a warning on it.
Nope.
That's what it says online. You received a warning for a failed drug test.
Yeah, I know. I know that's what they said. Never received a warning.
Okay. Right around this time, Bob Sapp.
Never received a warning, and they didn't even say they were drug testing us in any way that was more exceptional or had any more aspects to it than normal. Like they always drug tested for narcotics and things like that. And if you had any in your system, then you could get fined and penalized. And the way you would know your drug test fails, you wouldn't get your bonus check because they'd hold it until after the drug test. I got my bonus check. I never received a warning. I had no idea.
So I wonder why it says that online. Huh.
Because it's called CYA. It's what it was. It was definitely what was said by the commission at the time, but that's not true. And I also know of at least one fighter on the card who had been smoking weed very up until the night before and was or like 2 days before, and then they're asking me about, wait, they test? Like, yeah, dude, he didn't have any problems. I also know of other fighters in other situations, not just in the UFC, who would have tested positive if they were legitimately tested. Yeah.
Yeah. It seemed like and I don't want to kind of put this out there, but it seemed like Dana White didn't like you fighting for him, but then he hated you even more when you left him.
Well,
am I off on that?
Well, we know how personal things can become, or had the ability to become for Dana and fighters in the past. But I can say that we were very hard negotiators, and I think maybe Matt elevated. Well, Joe Silva had a tendency to just try and completely degrade and basically, I mean, to really simplify it, just shit talk any athlete ever trying to renegotiate for anything, to beat them down into a position where he's justified in paying them less than they want because you're not as good as you say you are. Because see, I have this time you lost, or blah blah blah. And Matt did not take very well to that. And yeah, the UFC made me a good deal for back then. Matt believed we could get better at Pride, but especially because, Rickson Gracie was getting like millions or $1 million. And Matt's wanted to test me on the open market. And he felt like, well, if we got the belt, they're going to pay big money for this to get you. And there wasn't like a real WWF guy leaves with the belt to WCW or vice versa kind of situation. But in the end, none of it worked that way.
Yeah, your fight with Randy Coutore, UFC 36 in Las Vegas. At the time, Randy was looked at as the greatest heavyweight in the world. You guys shared a lot of the same workout partners with TK, Maury Smith, and Frank Shamrock.
We even trained together at times.
Yeah, you guys all shared.
Like I helped him for his Pedro Rizzo fights. Yeah. No, he's great.
How difficult was that fight? Even taking that fight, having all of that, like kind of, crossing of training.
No, there was nothing that would keep me from getting into the ring, especially for the UFC heavyweight title. And we always kind of understood that at the time. And it wasn't personal; it was just business. I was always really surprised with the game plan that Randy went with because he had been striking so much with everybody. I really felt like I was going to get into more striking exchanges on the feet, and then I actually intended trying to take Randy down, put him on his back, and find the submission. But he just went straight to the double immediately in every round, and I just was like baffled. Like, why would you put me on the floor? Because this is where I'm far better than you. And I just remember every round, he'd start off with a little bit of an advantage off of a takedown, and then I would just start slowly but surely making him fight behind my work, and him getting more and more and more lost, till eventually in the second, And if you watch Randy back then, he almost never tries to pass people's guards. And he's just so frustrated of getting tied up, out hand fought, and elbowed in the face and punched in the face, and just getting beat up off my back, that he eventually gets. I remember right before it happens, he takes this big breath, and he lets out this big sigh, and then he stands up and he tries to pass my guard. And I scoop his leg and start going after a leg lock, and he immediately panics because that was what I used to do in practice, catch his leg and submit him. So he dives, and I follow up with him, get the front headlock, and follow on, soccer kick him in the body while he's down, and then lay in on him. And I remember people online were bitching and crying and pissing their pants, and he's throwing illegal strikes. No, it's not an illegal strike, you dumbass. I didn't throw it at the head, I threw it at the body. And Big John knew. In fact, all refs that I've ever had in unified rules and that are refereeing my fighters. So say Jason Herzog and Victor Henry last weekend. Every single time we let them know we're throwing soccer kicks at the legal targets, just so you know. Just FYI. Okay, just don't hit any of the illegal areas, and we're all good. And I told Big John that. I said, I'm going to soccer kick him if he gives me a legal target. Okay, don't soccer kick him in the head. And I soccer kicked him in the body and went after him, and eventually he turned over and then just poured the strikes on.
I don't ever recall, and I might be wrong on this, I don't think I ever recall you getting a point taken away in a fight due to a foul.
No. No, never have.
Huh. Yeah, Randy Coutore was a major favorite in that fight. And Josh.
Jeff Osborne made tons of money on me.
I wish you would have told me. I mean, I was going to the old hook and shoots at that point. I wish you would have told me because I didn't see it. Like I was like mouth open watching the TV going, holy shit, Josh he's the real deal. Youngest UFC heavyweight champion ever.
I was the youngest UFC champion, weight class champion until John Jones won his title. And he beat me by like 4 months, something like that.
Light heavyweight. Yeah. But you were the youngest UFC heavyweight champion at that point.
Mm-hmm. And that very night, there was some fans that were cheering for Randy, and they knew that my parents were behind them, and my sister and my brother-in-law. And my brother-in-law is not a small guy. He was on the same powerlifting team as Mike O'Hearn in Washington State. They were lifting buddies. He was nationally ranked. He's like a good 265. My dad, like I said, notorious street fighter, about 6'1", 245, with a grip of over 200 pounds in each hand at the time. And he could hit like a freight train. So anyways, these fans, and during the fight, my family's cheering for me. And this dipshit is deliberately like trying to cheer over the top of him for Randy and saying really obnoxious shit and like just being a real dickhead and trying to be as if he's cheering against me and my family at the same time, and knowing that they're cheering for me, doing stuff to be obnoxious about it. Eventually, I think it was my dad or my brother, whatever. They're like, man, you better just shut the fuck up, man. You're going to get your ass kicked. You keep this shit up. And eventually the guy's like, yeah, well, okay, what are you doing? And he gets all mouthy about it. So my dad starts getting up, my brother-in-law, and then Don Fry is right there. And he stands up and he says, look, man, I think you better rethink this. The guy turns, sits down, and shuts up the rest of the fight.
Don Fry's the best. He's the best. He's everybody's dad.
Yes, he is.
Don Fry's everybody's dad. He really is. Yeah. Yeah. The drug test after that. You failed the drug test. And I actually watched the hearing. Before I give you my thoughts of it, how did you think the hearing, and Matt Hume was sitting next to you, how did you think the hearing for this one?
Well, it didn't go very well. And it seemed as though it wasn't really, it wasn't even about drug testing. It seemed like it had agendas otherwise. because things like, and you were given a warning, things like Flip Hamansky trying to call me and get me to like admit to things and tell me stuff like, I'm not gonna look, I just called you, nobody knows yet, and you know, yada yada yada, just trying to get me to spill the beans. I've not told anyone yet, and I'm not, and all this. So you can tell me. Well, he had already called Matt. It's just like all this like really weird Weasley kind of
behavior.
It just didn't feel like I was dealing with something that was upholding itself to be
fair. It didn't seem fair. Yeah.
Going by the book.
Yeah.
No, it felt funny and fishy. And, my dealings with the NSAC have been very different since then. And, I've been licensed as a fighter. I've been licensed as a corner. I still will come across people on the commission that, we have good relationships. But, just at that moment, at that time, especially with that one particular individual, things didn't really seem on the up and up. But,
Joe,
at the end of the day,
Josh, hold up, dude. We can't go. Matt Hume, sitting next to you, didn't give a shit about who was up there. Matt Hume was like, oh, yeah, you're so-and-so. You got your job through this way. You're a cloud person. You're one of these. Matt Hume didn't. It's like, would you ever work a job where somebody wants to get fired? Yeah. And then they finally do it. And then they're on their way out. And they're like, you can go fuck yourself. Stick a finger up your ass. You're okay.
Yeah.
You're okay.
Yeah.
Matt Hume gave one of the greatest performances ever in front of an athletic commission. Sorry, just my 2 cents.
He got hot. He got hot about it because he too was like, hey, well, hold on. It's one thing to say based on something we can agree upon, but it's another thing to say, hold on, now you're changing your story. Now you're saying this. Now you made that up. Now you're like, whoa! And as soon as Matt sees that
he lost it.
Yeah, that was. And at the end of the day, I don't even think any of the other commissioners, like, I feel like at times these things can be where one person might have a particular agenda, the rest of them don't really care. They're like, yeah, whatever. Huh? What's going on? Like, all right, well, I'll vote this way then. Like, it's not important to them.
Josh,
it could be important to one.
I'm a lifelong combat sports fan. I couldn't imagine listening to Adelaide Bird tell me about judging or how to handle myself during a fight. Like, do you want me to go over your scorecards? Would you like me to go over your scorecards? Okay.
Wait, did you feel like they just wanted you out of the way?
Case, yeah, I do believe that they wanted to damage me and get rid of me because I'd pissed them off so much. And I mean, I don't have written video or any kind of proof, but just way too many links, way too many funny things. And after that, when Matt goes to negotiate with Pride, they're offering me like a shit offer. And I'm all, you got to be kidding me. Well, there ain't no way you're getting me in the ring for that money. So forget it. But they knew I didn't have anywhere else to go. Just turned out I could go to New Japan Pro Wrestling, something they hadn't figured.
Yeah, he signed a management deal with Inaki.
No, I just was part of the company. I just joined New Japan Pro Wrestling as a pro wrestler, but because I was under the auspices of Antonio Nogueira, there didn't have to be a management deal. Like, they're going to take care of me because I'm his guy, because they wouldn't do him dirty.
At this time, Bob Sapp was training with you. How big would you describe how he was in Japan at this moment?
When Bob blew up, he started on that rise. His first fight was Yoshihisa Yamamoto, and then I went over with him for the fight against Tamura. And after winning those 2 big bouts there, and then him doing some press and just being Bob, the interest is there. Then that night against Nogueira really cemented his name and his popularity. And then we were just doing press after press after press after press after press over there. And I was leading my helping hand with Japanese culture and references. So I'd get him to say stuff like he's going to be the Ghidorah, he's going to be the real life Ghidorah. He's going to have one head that's K1, one head that's Pride, one head that's New Japan Pro Wrestling. He's a three-headed monster of combat sports, and just little stuff like that. But you give Bob ammunition, and he hits the target. He knows how to take those shots. And at the time, he was training like a beast. He really was. And I classify Bob in this category I call super athletes. Like, they're just the way that they can move, their strength, their speed, they're super athletes. Any sporting endeavor you put them in, they will exceed, because they are just the top of the food chain as an athletic individual. Like people like him, people like Megumi Fuji, yeah, they're just super athletes.
Yeah. I was told that at one point he was like, he didn't have time to train because of all the press he was doing. But
I don't know if that's the case. That sounds like, if it's one thing Bob has more talent for them than fighting his excuses. So I don't know. He was always given all kinds of excuses why he couldn't make it in the gym to train before the Nogueira fight. And I tell you what, I had like 2 solid weeks with him, and he would do his conditioning work, but he needed to be in the gym. And Maurice couldn't get him to show up. He was always this. It was always bullshit though. And the thing is, after the fight, I'm like, Bob, if you'd have been there for a whole month at least, you'd have won this fight. You'd have absolutely won this fight. And I was one of the people, when the fight was offered to him, I said, you got to take this fight. And he's like, what do you mean? This guy is the champion of Pride, and blah, blah, blah. And I go, look, Bob, I'm telling you, his best attacks will not work worth a shit on you for the most part. Like his triangle game, unless you're dead, absolutely exhausted, he'll never put a triangle on you. You're just built too wide for it. An armbar, he's not going to catch you in an armbar unless you really get blown up and gassed out. And striking wise, yes, he's a better boxer, but he won't be able to deal with your pressure. And then as soon as you get on top of him, you just keep hammering away, keep your base. And this is a great fight for you. And he's like, you really think so? I go, look, Bob, this is a bad style matchup. Just your physicality is really bad for Nogueira. And the last thing that I did was I taught him the power bomb before the match. And he went out there. Nogueira, I knew he was going to shoot on him, but I knew Nogueira was a bad wrestler. So he'd take ugly shots. Bob sprawled him out, picked him up, bam, power bombed him right on his head. And we thought, oh my God, this is over. But Nogueira, stubborn, just the near unknockoutable at the time. Well, at the time, yeah, you couldn't. He'd never even been dropped at that point. He rallied through it, man. That guy, he's just made of granite. Got ran over by a bus or whatever as a kid.
Yeah, let's
right?
say the bus took an L to his head. Yeah, he took a W over a bus. Did you have some animosity towards Nogueira because you wound up in his opponent's corners on more than one occasion?
No, I didn't. Although he got mad at me for calling him out for a fight after the Bob Sapp match, but I was asked to by one of the guys in our corner, one of the dudes representing K1. He's like, "Hey, take the ring and take the mic and go call him out." So I did, and to be honest, that was a nerve-wracking affair because in front of 93,000 people, and it was so strange because I'd speak in the mic and I'd hear it echoing out over there, and so my brain was like short-circuiting and trying to remember how to speak while there must be a term for this where you're hearing your voice, but it's on this slight delay because of distance. Oh man, it is really discombobulating. But I pulled it together.
Everybody off.
And yeah, I guess he got hot at me over that one. But eventually it all evened itself out. But no, I didn't really have any animosity. I had like professional animosity, let's say. Like I want to destroy you because you're.
Is it admiration?
I knew how tough he was. I've got tons of admiration for him. But at the time, I just knew that everybody saw him as the top guy. And I'm like, I'm better than you are. I will even tap you out. You're a young fighter. and you want to go out there and prove yourself. So I never really had any real personal beef. More, I'd call it professional beef. Someone asked you if he was a good guy as a person, I'd be like, yeah, but what the fuck's that got to do with anything? I got to beat his ass,
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. All right, Josh, we've had you for a while. Can we get a couple more questions, or are you done? We've had a shitload of your time.
Sure, go ahead.
All right, cool. All right, so
I mean, honestly, I'm the guy who makes the argument that people don't remember shit anymore. They don't remember anything about boxing, kickboxing, MMA, whatever. If it's older than 5 years, it's like it never happened. And which is a radical departure from when I was a kid watching any sports, let alone combat sports like boxing. The reference to the older generations, the old champions, all the way back, at the very least, talking about Joe Louis, let alone if someone would bring up other fighters like Carmen Basilio or Wilfredo Benitez or just anybody.
Hey,
right?
Well, don't throw El Radar on our program, bro. El Radar, youngest world champion ever, 17 years old, senior in high school, and defended that belt. Come on, bro.
Yeah,
that's what our channel is.
So
we're only old school, dude.
But
we fuck these new cats. We're only old school.
The thing is, well, I get it, but it's just like we have like this collective unremembering. It's as if we only live in the now, and anything that takes a requirement to catalog that that isn't relevant immediately to something today, it doesn't happen. I mean, think about all the people that probably don't even know who Tito Ortiz is at this point, other than maybe from the political or things from most recent, but they don't realize that he was such a big ticket item and such a dominant fighter at his peak. Let alone, I feel like people don't even remember Chuck Liddell anymore. And that's
insane.
That's sad.
Criminal. It's criminal.
Yeah, it is. But, I remember being in Japan and wearing a Pancrase warm-up, and this was in the 2010s. Yeah, probably, or maybe late 2000s. And one of the dudes there, like, what's Pancrase? This American guy is about to fight. And he was from Extreme Couture, and one of the dudes with him is like, are you kidding me? I'll tell you later. But this was like the ultimate fighterization of MMA, right? Nobody knows who Chris Lieben is anymore. Nobody knows who, like, it's the ultimate fighterization of MMA.
Yeah.
Hey, it's just like, remember Tenner's Gonna 10 on the Underground? Or
right.
like
Right.
What was
KKM, over the KKM. Yeah.
King Nightmare. Yeah. But
did
but
you
just like,
people
there would be like, oh, what do you just showed up at 2010? You don't know shit. Shut the hell up. Like, you don't even need to be in this conversation. And then Musashi Bubenki comes in. Oh, another one bites the dust. Dun, dun, dun. Yeah. So all that dumb stuff. But it just, even back then, after the Ultimate Fighter, the guys in the underground are like, what the hell is going on? You guys come on here like you're like you are experts now, and maybe you've been around since a little while, but only starting from there on. And it's just like, what the fuck? Like, why don't come into this conversation as an expert? You need to be gate-kept into a proper position here.
Child, you need to listen for a little bit. Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah. Your New Japan Pro Wrestling debut was dude, main event, heavyweight title, Yuji Nagata. I mean, in terms of life experiences, that's got to be up towards the top.
It's pretty amazing. Sucks to lose, but still, what an incredible moment in my life. Being in the ring with someone that I remember watching on television and being a huge fan of, and starting off with something like that. Like, it was absolutely nerve-wracking. I was coming down with chickenpox at the very same time at 24 years old. Also added some intensity to the whole situation. And I just, oh man, it What a rush, man. Oh boy, 50,000 people or so.
Yeah, in terms of life experience, man, it's up there. It's up there. In March of 2004, Bob Sapp beat was it Konosuke Suzuki for the IWGP title. On the undercard, you fought Mitsuya Nagai, and Ken Shamrock came out and interfered in the match.
Oh yeah, they brought him in as a Mackay Club guy. Man, me and Ken then go to have a draw. Man, it could have been so much better. I just wasn't used to working the style. So Ken being a shoot style pioneer, like they have a different way of working that I didn't realize. Like I understood the stiff strike aspect, but they were stiff on the ground. Like they just wouldn't. They're so much tighter and so much more like towards 100% in terms of their grappling on the floor. And I was more used to working in a different way than that. I really wish I could have had another chance to have a match with Ken because he's so good. He's so good. His timing is impeccable. I remember I popped him with a high kick and dropped him and looked like $1 million. Like Ken was really something special. And Ken is always my what if I could go back in time and be like the head coach on a Ken or like his top corner man. I bet I could have had him winning every UFC he was in.
Yeah, I'm a huge Shamrock fan as well. Yeah, I am. And were there like conversations about who's laying down, or was it just automatically decided it was going to be a draw between you two?
New Japan handled all that.
Okay. No negotiation, so it's not like the United States, huh?
Well, no, I mean the office will determine that. You don't get a say, you know. That's the way the business works. And that keeps things out of the hands of the wrestlers because they will go into business for themselves almost immediately.
Yeah. April 25th, 2004, the Pride Grand Prix. There was a rumor that you were invited, but you said you didn't want to face Fedor, and you mailed your contract back unsigned.
Which was this?
2004 Pride Grand Prix.
No, I think was this before? If this is before I fought Mirko, then obviously I wasn't recovering from a dislocated shoulder. But no, I never did that. And God, the only situation I could think of, if they really did offer me Fedor, which I don't think that they would have at that point. The only way I would have ever said no would have been a money thing. It would have been like, oh, you want me to take this fight for cheap? Well, no, that's not happening. I know what the value of this is, and you're going to have to pay me for it. But I don't. In 2004, he wasn't the guy yet. God, yeah, I don't remember being
getting the
offered
contract
for the Pride Grand Prix at all. No.
Yeah, it was kind of the rumor.
My first fight in Pride was Mirko Krokop, and that's what I remember.
All right, so behind the scenes, what was being said was you were under contract with Inoki and Pancrase, and this was kind of your subtle, oh, no, I'm going to get the contract back to you. Let me mail it to you. And you sent it back unsigned as kind of like a screw you in terms of loyalty to the people that you were representing. Is that not true?
I mean, that sounds pretty cool. So,
yeah.
No, I don't recall that. I'm usually pretty good about these things, but that doesn't ring a bell.
Rene Ruse, K1 Romantics. You knocked him out in 215. Rene is known as like the Dutch system has got some of the filthiest fighters, like top 10 filthy fighters in the world. 7 or 8 of them are from Holland.
Yeah,
Rene's in that category.
He is a maniac. That guy he's got lots of stories of him destroying people out in the clubs in Amsterdam. He's a wild one. I remember I got pissed off in that fight because I shot a double on him. My plan was I was going to pick him up and hit some big pro wrestling suplex or something on him, you know. make a highlight out of it. And I got in on that double right away. I was lifting him up, and I even planned for, I knew he was going to cheat and grab the ropes. I just knew he was going to do that. So I wasn't even fazed about it. So I'm trying to pull him off the ropes. I'm holding him on. I'm holding on. I know I'm going to get this. And the ref, I guess, is trying to slap his hands away. What he didn't just have the ropes. He had linked his hand between under the second rope and over the top rope, and just had completely gripped up. And he just over the top of the ropes. And I could not let him do, and the ref, he wouldn't let the ref break it, nothing. So eventually the ref has to stop the match. He gives him a yellow card. He throws the yellow card in the audience. And now I'm like, you just stole my glory moment, my cool opportunity to shine. And so I just come charging in, boom, double leg, and put him on the floor and just brutalize him. And there was a rule saying, like, if you're falling out of the ring, they'll just restart the match standing up. Well, he deliberately tries to shove himself out between the ropes, but he'd already pissed the referee off by not listening to his commands and chucking his yellow card away. So he let him. He swung his head under, and I came through the ropes, bang, came under the ropes, bang, knocked him out. I knocked him out like 2 or 3 times as I'm ground and pounding this dude. And then I come out, and I'm like, oh, you want to hold the ropes now? You want to hold the ropes now? Come on. You want to break some rules? And I'm just basketballing his head. Yeah.
Those Dutch fight, Gordeau, Dirty Bob Schreiber. I mean, it's Freak Hammaker, all those guys, just filthy fighters, Matt. All of them.
Gnarly dudes. They fought a lot in the streets, so they just didn't have the kind of sportsman. Well, I don't know. It's tough to say because they also all came from sporting backgrounds. But best I could say is, yeah, they just when it came to fighting, they didn't think of things in terms of rules.
Those got away.
Gordeau said, "Yeah, I gouged him, and I'm not sorry. I wanted to win."
Yeah.
And that's just the mentality.
Yeah, he said Dirty Bob Schreiber is a fantastic sportsman. That's what
Not a real fighter.
Yeah, those are real quotes from our Gordeau interview. Yeah.
He wasn't dirty enough for Gordeau.
Wasn't dirty enough. No. It's what it is. In 2004, Pride announced a matchup with the Russian top team, Suren Balachinskiy, the Sambo world champion, and that of yourself. And they ended up giving him the overreign. But there was like a lot of, at this time, Pride would.
Where do you get this information? I don't remember being booked against this guy whatsoever.
Josh, I'm telling you about things that you don't know about yourself. Okay?
That's why he's the MMA detective.
Yeah. Where are you guys?
Yeah, I had no clue.
What I do, Josh, this is what I did. So my mental illness for about 20 years has me keep press releases. Like I've got all the old American top team press releases, any Pride press release. I have it. I physically have them, and I just kind of catalog them. I also go through YouTube comments, the underground forum, message board. Like I go everywhere. Like I need like 4 or 5 days of research for each guest. So, but
we got to be a little careful with YouTube and the underground comments, because there are guys. Sometimes you will come across gems, but sometimes these people, they just want to be known as somebody that's put something out in the world and that their story is believed over somebody else's.
Absolutely.
But I don't ever remember being offered this guy. Maybe they were thinking about it, but yeah.
What about Pedro Rizzo? What about Pedro Rizzo? A rematch?
No, I don't think so.
Because I know Pride at the time.
And even then, at the time,
go ahead.
Well, I mean, he had in Pride, he lost twice in a row.
Yeah.
So if it was after that, I know we would have been like, no, we're not interested. But no, I don't ever remember being offered Pedro as a rematch until Affliction.
All right. So I know at the time they were trying to create like a Pride versus UFC angle. And you were going to be, one of those cornerstones in that fight.
Unbeknownst to me, I had no clue. Plus, the UFC wasn't going to claim me, so I wasn't going to fight on their behalf. I was fighting on New Japan's behalf.
Right. You were pretty inactive for a bit of time. Was Was this your management agreement and issues between some of the other parties? Because at one point you were fighting nonstop.
What's the period of inactivity?
Well, here, I mean, from, let me see, 3 years with only 5 fights. New Japan, I mean, the rumor was that New Japan wasn't allowing you to fight more.
Well, 3 years with 5 fights.
Yeah, but look at your record, dude. Like you were.
No, I know. I
rattling
mean,
off. I mean,
you
dude,
know, 3 years and 5 fights is pretty. You know, that's even a lot for some of the guys nowadays. But I just think, well, part of it is I know I dislocated my shoulder in that Crocop match, so that took a whole year out. That took forever to recover from. But also, I was doing tours and just trying to find big matches, not just taking fights. You know.
This is when you started training with Erik Paulson and Lou Smith, formerly of R1 team.
Yep. Well, Paulson had his own stuff, and Lucius, he's a strength and conditioning guy. He worked under Marv Marinovich. So it's so funny when BJ came around with the whole Marv Marinovich stuff, I'm like, oh, now this is amazing. It's like I was doing all this stuff, battle ropes and all these things. Lou taught me all that in like mid 2000s, 2004 or 5. I mean, we're doing this stuff. And he picked it up from, there's a Russian down in San Diego, kettlebell guy, and he would do heavy jump ropes, and then the whole battle ropes thing was shown to Lou by this dude, and there's all these different protocols that Marinovich had been working on, and Lou adapted it and changed his own stuff. And you know, Lou used to work with different professional football players, but he was also a jiu-jitsu guy, so he understood what you needed. And that I was working with Lou for strength conditioning work and training under Erik Paulson.
Did you ever work out with the Raw team?
A little, yeah, somewhat with
like Rico Chiapparelli,
with Frank Trigg and Mayushenko and Chiapparelli as a coach. Yeah, I used to train with those guys too at times. I helped. In fact, Trigg had a fight and he broke his nose before the fight in sparring with me, because I had him in a tie plum and I was just throwing knees at a body, and he whips to duck his head out of it and ducks right into a knee, breaks his nose. He ends up going out there and smoking this guy anyways, so it was pretty great. In fact, Rico's like, I don't know, maybe having a pre-broken nose made him even tougher. I don't know. He got a better result out of him, he felt. But yeah, I remember training at Raw Team and having good relationships and connections with them. Yeah.
Were you there when Rico got thrown out of Henzo's gym after he cornered Tom Erickson versus Merlo Bustamante?
No. That was long before this. I don't even think they had really a Raw gym maybe at the time, or at least what would become the Raw gym in El Segundo.
Okay.
I think they were just out of Boxing Works, which is where Paulson met them.
You fought in an organization in Australia, Impact FC. Guillermo dos Santos was your opponent. Did you ever get paid for that fight?
I got paid 40% of what I'm owed.
The whole card got stiffed, and dude, it's an all-star card. It's probably one of the best outside of Pride and UFC cards ever put together.
It was pretty good. It was a lot of fun. A 2-day event. Australia was pretty cool, though monumentally expensive. But yeah, boy, tried to track that son of a bitch down multiple times, but you know, there's just no way of getting him.
What was the promoter's name? Do you remember?
You know, I could look him up, but I don't remember off the top of my head. He was a concert promoter. So he just ran away from this, and I guess there wasn't any legal, I don't know what legal recourse we had to really go after him, but it just could not track this son of a bitch down. And he had connections to an office out here that he was using to relay messages and things like that. But yeah, at the end of the day, he ran and left us hanging. And I can't, that's one of the worst. You know, we put our lives on the line. You're going to steal money out of our mouths. I mean, that's just despicable.
You mentioned Erik Paulson.
You know, it's not like we played a basketball game.
You mentioned Erik Paulson. When we had Erik Paulson on, you know, you're talking about a guy that in the Mid 80s was doing privates with Hickson and Boyce, and he's obviously a Danny Inosanto prodigy, some would say. When we asked him, who was the most influential person that he's ever worked out with, he said Danny Inosanto. It's not even a question. Did you get a chance to work out with Danny at all?
Very little. Or a little, I can say. But most of the training with Dan was usually in Kali Eskrima, maybe some JKD. He just has a crazy open mind towards martial arts, and he just loves putting himself into like completely over his head or completely underwater with any of his training. So he just will try to just live in it and really take it on. So it's impressive to see how eager he is for martial knowledge, but also he's still in fantastic shape, especially for his age and all the things that he's accomplished and all the inspiration and guidance that he has given so many people.
Erik Paulson, in my opinion, like people talk about like the dirty dozen of jiu-jitsu, the first 12 black belts under Royce, or the Gracie family. To me, it's criminal that Erik Paulson's name isn't listed there.
Well, he didn't get one he wasn't part of that dirty dozen.
He
eventually
got thrown out.
Well, yeah, and there's what was that? There's that girl from Texas. She gets forgotten about all the time too, left out of the equation. Kathy, or what's her name? She fought MMA a little bit. Yeah, she was like the first American female black belt, I think. Well, it's just like I say, man, a lot of this stuff, it just really gets forgotten, especially these days. And yeah, Erik Paulson won the Pan Am Games, one of the first ones or second ones, I don't know when, but he, again, was just driven to acquire as much martial knowledge as possible. And you can't really blame a guy like that, especially early on, because I had to do the same thing because we didn't have a blueprint for how do you become an MMA fighter, like, training Wing Chun and then doing Kali and Eskrima and then Muay Thai and then, whatever you could get your hands on in any way, shape, or fashion, because you're just looking for any edge, any technical skill, any form of combat that you could use to your advantage. And you just had to scour through it all.
Right. Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, this podcast was brought to you by Ralph Garcia, the Florida Mixed Martial Arts Hall of Fame, November 16th, 2024. Man, Josh Barnett, you're a bad motherfucker, man. Thank you. We've been trying to track you down for a minute, man. Greatly, greatly appreciate it.
I am full of stories. I have been to a lot of places and seen a lot of things. That's true.
These are what are left on the table. I can have you here for another fucking 4 hours, but I'm not having Josh Barnett.
I'm sure I've got way more stuff that's not on those lists, of course.
Well, no. Dude. This only goes up to, I'll tell you right now, it goes up to October 31st, 2005. Yeah. No. Portion of your career. I got 8 pages.
Well, it's stuff like I ran to Lance Gibson and Chris Franco, who trained with us at AMC Pancration over in at UFC at Apex Center. And Lance, I cornered Lance in one of his last fight, in his last UFC fight against Evan Tanner. That same night, I was in the corner with Jeff Monson and Dennis Hallman. And when Dennis Hallman armbarred
Hughes?
The second time he armbarred Hughes. And I just remember being a part of all this stuff. And that very night was the night that Dana White, was Dana even there in Japan? I think he was. But the Fertittas and Dana and John Peretti and Big John and all of us, it was just okay, here's your new owners. These guys just bought the UFC. This is Lorenzo Fertitta. We went out on the town that night.
Well, wait a minute. Wait. No, let's talk about weigh-ins. Were you there when Dennis Hallman and Jeff Monson broke the weigh-in scale for that event?
I wasn't. Well, maybe.
Yeah, Dennis is like, yeah, we just got up on the counter and smashed it because it was off. Fuck them. They're trying to cheat us on weight. Yeah, Jeff Monson's like, yeah, dude, we did. And Jeff also said that he fought with a Wizinator on. Dude, the things that Jeff Monson admitted in his interview with us is fucking it's amazing.
They weren't even testing it. They weren't even testing then. I don't know why he would bother fighting with a Wizinator on, unless I don't know. But yeah, the scale was broken.
Yeah, courtesy of that.
I don't know how off it
Northwest.
was, or maybe one of them needed a pound or two. But either way, it all worked out.
Dennis said, as long as you lean down in a certain way, you can knock a pound or two off. I don't know why these fucking balloons keep coming up in my interview. Dude, I got a kid. I don't know what she did with my fucking iPad. So, Josh, in all honesty, man, like here's a little taste. Shayna Baszler's on a 2-fight losing streak. You train her for the freestyle cage fighting championship in Oklahoma. She goes on a crazy 3-fight run. Megumi Yabushita, Alexis Davis, Adriana Jenkins. Like, dude, you have transformed people's lives in terms of fighting. Like, you've just changed their overall direction. And
talk about something people don't remember. Women's MMA. They don't remember any of the future of that.
That's important. You know, I mean, Hector Lombard, you got a phenomenal story with Hector Lombard at Erik Paulson's gym. Follow up with American Top Team. I mean, what the fuck? Good shit.
It's a wild life.
Good shit, dude. Good shit. We'd like to have you back on. I mean, obviously we'd space it out.
I like talking history, that's for sure, especially when I get to learn something myself.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what we are. We're an MMA history podcast. So, Josh Barnett, Joey, why don't you lead us out here, dude?
Thank you for being with us. That's all I got to say. I was at your fight when you fought Coutore, and to see what the UFC was back then, and to be a fan following it all the way through to where it is today, like, you were one of the pieneers. So yeah, I'm just glad we finally got a chance to talk to you.
I was a pioneer for upsetting people, for licking blood off of my hands and and everything. I was a pioneer for getting shirts with profanity banned because I was sponsored by Tap Out, and they had this t-shirt that said "Represent Motherfucker" on the back. So I walk right up to the camera, turn dead ass around, and then take my shirt off from there, so you could see "Represent Motherfucker" in the camera. That was a no-go. I was the first person to ever do a walkout. Nobody had ever done that. I had Mask and Skyscrape with me, and we practiced it a little bit, and we just come up with something, and boom, I did that when I went out there and fought Randy. No one had ever done that shit before, because, to me, it was like, this is all pro wrestling, man. This is all about trying to make that moment.
That was the pro wrestling era. They still had fireworks back then for the walk-ins, didn't they?
Yeah, they did. But I mean, it's just that people weren't treating it the same way as I was.
No, for sure. No,
but that changed.
Good shit. Josh, dude, always a pleasure. Next time you're on the south side of Chicago, I definitely got to grab lunch with you and Matt. Matt's worked with me for 20 plus years. So greatly appreciated, man. Thank you, sir.
Well, hit him up. We have a rescheduled seminar.
Good. Excellent. Take care, brother. Former UFC champion Joey Venti. Fuck, that was
one in the books.
That was a good one. We got him rolling.
You could do 3 parts with him.
We can probably just do pro wrestling. You can do. There's so much, dude. Like, that's only a small portion of his career.
Yeah. Like he said, he had a talent for pissing off promoters, so he fought everywhere. That's the upside of that he experienced every promotion.
I wish the athletic, like the Nevada Athletic Commission, his initial hearing, Matt Hume came off the rails. And like, I watched it and I'm like, this is glorious. Like, they weren't handling it right, but they were going in there and they were getting talked down to. The athletic commission that governed the event was using wrong terminology. It was clear that they were in charge of governing an event that they really didn't know about. And Hume, dude, go get on the wrong side of Matt Hume.
No, Josh Barnett at this time, he tests positive for nandrolone. That's what he tests positive for. And his excuse is I used a supplement, an over-the-counter supplement that is now known for testing you positive for nandrolone. That excuse didn't fly. But in the USADA era, he tests positive for performance-enhancing drugs, later proves that it actually came from a supplement. So he was kind of vindicated in that. I'm not saying he didn't juice, but I'm saying when USADA nailed him, and by the way, they put him on the shelf for a year and a half. There's no apology. There's no paying you the money you missed.
I'm going to tell you the question I almost asked. And I mean, we're 2 hours in. So like the question, I'm like, let's talk about Jeff Novinsky. And then that's it. That's it.
The golden snitch.
Sit back. Dude, this is a guy that dug through the garbage of Lance Armstrong 5 years after his last competition. And then he's going to go give John Bones Jones, hey, dude, there's picograms. There's picograms here. Whoa. Slow down. Like, the dude, I don't use the word coward often. And I know being that we're an MMA history program, you really shouldn't throw certain people under the bus. Jeff Novinsky's a coward. He's a coward. Dude, it is what it is. You're not going to sit here and be okay with moving an event one day and, Lance Armstrong 5 years after digging through his garbage, like he wouldn't have given Lance Armstrong that benefit of the doubt. Like he wouldn't have. So, nah. Anyway, it's neither here nor there.
We're not fans of him.
We can do an entire 90 minutes. Just Jeff Novinsky. Go ahead, Josh. And just sit back.
Yeah, that could be one of the episodes.
Just bullet points. So, all right. Like, share, subscribe. We're going to need, dude, we need like 33 iTunes reviews. Before I was asking for hundreds of them. I need 33 and we're at 100. 33 iTunes reviews. Joey, your kids' cell phones, your old lady. Someone's got to leave these friggin' reviews for us. I mean, we're putting out good shit, dude. We're putting out good shit here. That's how you know men listen. It's only men. A woman, like these murder fucking podcasts that are getting all the listens, women leave reviews. And those podcasts flourish and they grow and they become big things. And Joey, we can make more than I think $33.41 is what our gross was last month. We could actually make more than that per month.
Dozens of dollars. We're going to make dozens of dollars together.
But the men don't leave iTunes reviews.
Do you have an iTunes account? I don't have an iTunes account.
You got an iPhone?
Yeah, I do.
Oh, Joey, see, here's the problem, dude. When you go into our podcast using your iPhone, you hit the little podcast app, you can look at our podcast and write a review.
No, I've done it, but I listen to it through Spotify.
Okay. Well, then you put 5 stars on Spotify. I
did.
Did you leave a review for us? Did you leave one as if you were a listener and not actually on the podcast?
I was a listener. I didn't meet you for a year after that. So yes, I did leave a review as a listener because I was one.
And I'm not questioning your manhood here, but most men that listen to this don't do that, Joey.
I might have done it right around the time I started coming on. I don't remember exactly, but I left one. My point is I don't listen to it on iTunes, so I haven't done that yet on iTunes.
Okay. Well, that's the iPhone. You got an iPhone. Maybe that's what you think. That's like our listeners are just so fundamentally retarded that they can't differentiate.
No, I think our listeners are Rogan listeners. Rogan was exclusively to Spotify, so I think a lot of our listeners listen on Spotify as opposed to iTunes. I don't know.
I will make the argument.
I grew up
that
in the
they're
80s.
retarded.
I don't understand tech.
No, I will make the argument that the hard R word applies because they're not leaving iTunes reviews for us. They're not using like the iPhone to leave a review. And we've even said anything you guys say there. People even ask me about my old business partner. Go back. I read it. Don't care.
I've told my friends, leave a review. It doesn't matter. You can even make fun of me. We'll read it. Just make sure it's 5 stars.
They wouldn't do it. Fuck.
I got to push harder. I don't have any real friends. I'm a lonely person. What can I say?
I don't know, man. I don't know. I'm going to go beat my wife because I don't have enough iTunes reviews. And that could change. No, that could change. It could change.
That's right. Ladies and gentlemen, you can reduce domestic violence right now. The ball is in your court. You can be a hero without hardly lifting a finger. You can stay in your pajamas and be a hero right now.
iPhone, get that review going. Joey, love you, brother. Hey, dude, nice finally meeting you in person, too, by the way.
That's right.
BKFC event out in California.
That's right. Thanks for the new job.
That's right, dude. Cut man, Joey Venti.
That's right.
All right.
Thanks.
Do your thing, man. I'll see you.
See ya.
Check out the full interview on iTunes, Spotify, and all major podcast platforms.